There are moments in life when you find yourself questioning whether to let someone go, whether to release the bond and walk away. The mind, of course, it will make its argument, it will say, this is too complicated. This is dragging on too long. This should have been settled by now. And yet, strangely enough, deep within, there is no storm. Instead, you discover unusual stillness that rests beneath the noise of your thoughts. It is not the stillness of indifference, not the dull silence of resignation, but a living peace. Something that feels almost sacred, as though it does not belong to you, but flows through you. This peace is not manufactured. You cannot force it. You cannot talk yourself into it. And you certainly cannot imitate it with affirmations or positive thinking. It comes uninvited, like sunlight through a window you forgot to close. And when it is there, it is unmistakable. Even if your mind spits its tales of logic, doubt, and fear, your heart remains calm, as though it has already glimpsed something the mind has yet to understand. That is often the first sign that you are not meant to let this person go, for peace is the fingerprint of something higher than your own desire. Think about all the times you've made choices out of restlessness. You felt hurried, pressured, anxious, or uncertain, and you rushed into decisions just to silence the discomfort. And later, what did you find? That such choices rarely brought joy. They might have given you temporary relief, but not lasting harmony. Now contrast that with this strange, abiding calm. The mind is shouting, yet the spirit is whispering, stay still. Do not move yet. This is not confusion. It is direction. It is the way life itself says, I am still unfolding here. Do not shut the book before the story has had a chance to finish. The beauty of this piece is that it does not rely on circumstances. You may not have clarity. You may not see the outcome. The relationship might be strained, the distance unbearable, or the timing entirely inconvenient. Yet beneath it all, there is no panic, no desperation, no finality. Instead, there is the sense that something is quietly being arranged, as if life has already set a table that you cannot yet see. You are simply asked to wait, to trust, to let the flow carry you. This peace is not passivity. It does not mean you sittingly doing nothing or refusing to grow. Quite the opposite. It is an invitation to prepare yourself, to deepen your own awareness, to refine your heart. Because the very existence of that peace suggests that what is to come will require your fullest self. Peace is not an excuse to be stagnant. It is a reminder to be ready. And so, when you are tempted to move on, to push away, to close the door prematurely, pause for a moment and listen. Feel the difference between the agitation of your restless mind and the quiet assurance of your inner being. If you find within yourself a peace that you cannot explain, a calm that persists no matter how loudly your thoughts protest, away from it, then perhaps you are being led to remain. For it is not always our task to understand the timing. It is enough that we learn to recognize the signs. So often we are told that love should be easy, that clarity should come quickly, that certainty should be immediate. But life does not unfold in such linear simplicity. Sometimes the most important journeys require patience, the willingness to rest in the unknown. And if God has planted this stillness within you, then it is because he knows that the story is not over, that something more is yet to be revealed. So listen closely, not to the chatter of fear, not to the reasoning of impatience, but to the peace that lingers in your chest. For that is the voice that cannot deceive you. It is the signal that, despite appearances, you are exactly where you are meant to be. And the moment you truly feel that, you will understand peace itself is the answer. Life has a peculiar way of repeating itself when it wants you to pay attention. It is almost as if existence itself becomes a teacher, tapping you gently on the shoulder again and again until you finally notice the lesson it is offering. You may try to move on, to silence the longing, to convince yourself that it is time to close the chapter and walk away. And yet, everywhere you turn, reminders appear. A phrase in a book, a line in a song, a conversation overheard in passing, they all seem to echo the same theme, pointing you back to the very person you thought you had left behind. Now, this is not the repetition of obsession, nor is it the cycle of unhealthy longing. This is something different. It has a subtlety to it, a gentleness that feels less like clanging and more like guidance. It is as though life is saying, no, you haven't misunderstood. Look again, this matters. And the curious thing about these repetitions is that they often come when you are least expecting them. You're not searching for signs, and yet they arrive unbidden, like waves lapping against the shore, reminding you of the tide that continues beneath the surface. We live in a world where chance and coincidence are easy explanations. It is convenient to say, that was random, that was nothing. But deep down, you know, when something goes beyond chance, when the same message comes to you in different forms, from different voices, in different places, and yet all converges on the same truth, it no longer feels accidental. It begins to feel deliberate, as though a hand larger than your own is arranging the pieces, weaving a pattern you are only just beginning to see. Imagine for a moment that life is like a vast orchestra. Each event, each encounter, each seemingly trivial detail is a note being played. On its own, a single note may not carry much meaning, but when the same melody repeats across instruments, when the same theme arises again and again, you begin to recognize the music. And if the same motive keeps returning, you would be foolish to ignore it, because it is trying to draw your attention to something essential in the composition. So it is with these signs. Pay from it. They are the recurring themes in the music of your life, urging you not to dismiss what is still unfinished. And perhaps you have noticed this already. Way from it, perhaps you've caught yourself smiling when a particular scripture, a particular word, or even the mention of that person's name surfaces at just the right time. You brush it off, and then the very next day, something similar happens again. There is a certain humor in a kind of playful persistence, as though the universe enjoys nudging you, saying, still not listening, let me try again. Now, the important thing here is not to confuse this with wishful thinking. Repetition that comes from your own longing feels heavy, desperate, self-imposed. It's as though you are forcing every cloud, every bird, every passing thought into a message that supports your desire. But the repetition I speak of is not forced. It is effortless. It arrives unannounced with no strain on your part. That is how you can tell the difference. It is not your imagination striving to confirm your hopes. It is life itself moving in its mysterious rhythm. The beauty of this is that it requires you to be humble enough to listen. You cannot command these signs, nor can you predict when they will appear. All you can do is remain open, pay attention, and notice when patterns repeat themselves in ways that are too striking to ignore. And when they do, it is not a command to cling, but an invitation to trust that perhaps, despite all appearances, you are not meant to let go just yet. So if you find that reminders of this person continue to appear, if the same truths resurface in the most unexpected corners of your life, pause for a moment. Do not dismiss them too quickly. Do not rush to call them coincidence. For repetition is one of the oldest languages of the divine. It speaks not in shouts, but in echoes. And when life echoes again and again, it is not because you are meant to turn away, but because you are meant to listen. And once you begin to listen, you will understand what repeats is what remains. Waiting is one of the hardest things we are ever asked to do. The human mind craves resolution. It wants to know where things stand, to label and everything as finished or unfinished, to close the book or open a new one. But life does not operate according to the mind's impatient timelines. It takes its time, and often it places us in seasons where nothing seems to be moving forward, where the relationship is uncertain, where clarity refuses to arrive. And yet, if you look closer, you will see that these pauses are not empty at all. They are not wasted. They are a workshop in which your spirit is being shaped. When you are waiting for someone, truly waiting not out of fear or insecurity, but sense that something greater is unfolding, you begin to notice a shift in yourself. At first, you may wrestle with impatience. You want answers, you want progress, you want something concrete. But as the days and months pass, the very act of waiting begins to change you. You start to learn patience, not as a concept, but as a lived experience. You discover that love is not proven in the grand gestures of the moment, but in the quiet endurance of time. In this way, waiting becomes its own form of preparation. You may think you are waiting for them, but in truth, you are being refined. Your rough edges are softened. Your self-centeredness is chipped away. You begin to see more clearly where you need to grow, what you must release, and how you must expand in order to hold what is being prepared for you. For if the relationship is truly meant to be, away from it, it will require the best version of you, not the hurried, incomplete version you were yesterday. Notice how waiting reveals your attachments. It shows you whether your desire for this person is rooted in fear of being alone, or whether it springs from something deeper, more selfless. In the silence of waiting, illusions fall away. You cannot cling to fantasy forever. You begin to see them more clearly, and you begin to see yourself more clearly too. This is not a punishment. It is a gift, because love that endures must be grounded in truth and not in projection. And while you wait, you are also being prepared for resilience. For love, as beautiful as it is not without trials. There will be misunderstandings, seasons of distance, moments of doubt. If you have not learned how to endure in the quiet, how will you endure when the storms come? Waiting trains you for faithfulness. Away from it, it builds within you a strength that does not depend on instant gratification. It shows you how to love without conditions, how to hope without guarantees, how to trust without always needing proof. The curious thing is that over time, you realize the waiting has not been about reaching some distant goal. It has been about the transformation happening within you in the meantime. You discover qualities in yourself that you never imagined. Patience compassion, humility, depth. And when at last the time comes when paths align and clarity emerges, you will not be the same person you were when you began. You will be ready not only to receive love, but to give it in its true form. So often, we treat waiting as a delay, as though life has made an error, as though our story has stalled. But waiting is not delay. It is design. It is the process by which we are made capable of holding what is sacred. And if you find yourself in that season now, where you cannot move forward and you cannot move away, know that this is not in vain. Something is happening quietly, invisibly within you. And when you understand that, you will see that waiting is not an obstacle. Waiting is the preparation for the very thing you long for. And the truth is simple: love is worth having. It is worth waiting for. There is something profoundly mysterious about the way two lives can align and wait from it. Even on the surface, everything seems to be pulling them apart. You may not share the same circumstances. You may not even be walking the same immediate path, but deep beneath all of that, there is a resonance, a harmony that speaks louder than distance or difficulty. It is not the fleeting attraction of appearances, nor the convenient partnership of circumstance, but something rooted far deeper, a sense that your values, your calling, and your very direction in life point toward the same horizon. When this alignment exists, it becomes difficult to ignore. You notice that your conversations naturally drift toward the same truths, the same longings, the same vision for what life could. You see the world through different eyes, yes, but those eyes are gazing toward the same light. And that is no small thing, because many people in this life may share your laughter, your interests, or even your passions, but very will share your purpose. And when you find someone whose heart beats in rhythm with your own deeper calling, it is as if something sacred has been revealed. This alignment is not about being identical. It does not mean you agree on every opinion or that you mirror one another in personality or style. Rather, it is about the foundation, the bedrock beneath it all. If your foundation is faith, you will find theirs is too. If your compass points toward growth, service, love, and truth, so does theirs. And when the foundations match, the differences on the surface no longer feel like barriers. They feel like complements, like necessary balance that makes two people stronger together than they could ever be alone. You can sense this alignment in subtle ways. It appears in the ease with which you talk about things that matter most to you and back from it. And in the comfort of knowing that you do not need to compromise your deepest convictions to be with them. Back away from it, you don't feel that quiet dissonance that comes when you must dim your light or silence your beliefs just to keep someone close. Instead, you feel the apotheal expanded. You feel encouraged to grow even more fully into yourself. That is the hallmark of alignment, not that you shrink to fit into someone else's life, but that together you make room for one another to rise higher It is also important to notice what happens to you through this process. By praying for another, by carrying them sincerely in your heart, you are transformed. Your love expands, your compassion deepens, your ego loosens its grip. You are no longer asking only for your own needs, but for theirs. And that is one of the purest expressions of love, to wish wholeness for another, even when they cannot hear you, even when they are far away. So if you find that this person continues to weigh on your heart in prayer, take it not as a burden, but as a sign that the story is not finished, that their presence in your life has purpose beyond what you can see. Do not dismiss it as imagination. Do not call it coincidence, for prayer has always been the language of the eternal. And when that language continues to return to the same soul, it is because they are meant to remain connected to yours. There are times in life when the idea of moving on seems like the practical thing to do. People around you might encourage it. Your mind might even agree, pointing out all the reasons why letting go would make sense. And yet, somewhere deep within, you hesitate, not out of fear of being alone, not out of habit, but because something in your spirit whispers that to walk away would be to walk against the current of life itself. It is not stubbornness. It is conviction. You feel quietly but unmistakably that letting go would not be an act of freedom, but an act of disobedience to something higher than your own reasoning. This feeling is not loud. It does not shout. It does not demand. It comes as a subtle knowing, a gentle resistance in the heart each time you consider cutting the cord. The mind may argue endlessly, saying, it's time to move on. It's time to close the chapter. It's time to protect yourself. But beneath all those voices, there is another voice that refuses to agree. That voice does not come from fear. It comes from truth. And you know it because you cannot silence it, no matter how hard you try. Think of how it feels when you make a decision that is out of alignment with who you truly are. There is a heaviness to it and an unease, a subtle dissonance that follows you no matter where you go. And conversely, when you make a choice that is aligned with truth, there's a deep peace, even if the choice is difficult. The same principle applies here. If every time you consider leaving, you sense that unrest rising within you, it is because you are attempting to close a door that life has not finished opening. This does not mean the path will be easy. Obedience rarely is. Sometimes the hardest thing to do is to stay when everything around you suggests it would be easier to walk away. But the measure of truth is not in how convenient it feels. It is in how deeply it resonates with your spirit. And if your spirit tells you to remain, then remaining is not weakness, it is strength. It is the strength to trust that there is more to this story than you can currently see. It is also worth noticing the difference between attachment and conviction. Attachment clings out of fear. It cannot imagine a future without this person, so it holds on desperately. Conviction, however, is calm. It does not cling, it simply knows. It does not need to force. It simply rests in the assurance that this bond has not yet reached its completion. And when you are guided by conviction rather than fear, you will find that the waiting does not break you. It shapes you. At times you may feel foolish. You may wonder if you are imagining it all. But then life has a way of reaffirming what your spirit already knows. A message arrives at the right moment. A reminder appears unexpectedly, and you find yourself reassured once again, it is not blind hope that keeps you here. It is the unmistakable sense that to give up now would be to step outside the very path you are meant to walk. There is a kind of surrender in this recognition. You stop trying to control the outcome. Stop trying to force a timeline, and instead you allow yourself to be carried by the current. You realize that your role is not to decide when the story ends, but to remain faithful until a chapter is complete. And in that surrender, you discover something extraordinary, freedom. For true freedom is not doing whatever you please. It is the freedom of aligning yourself so completely with truth that even waiting becomes a kind of joy. So if you find yourself in that place where everything in you knows that letting go would be disobedience, trust that knowing. Trust it more than the chatter of your fears, more than the opinions of others, more than the impatience of your own mind. For that knowing is not an obstacle, it is a compass. And when you follow, you will realize obedience to truth is the highest form of love.